Matt Moscona.
I'm very important.
After further review.
Say it one more time.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
And here we go.
Live from the Raising Cane studio.
Let's ride!
Hour number 2 off and running after further review here on a Tuesday, presented by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Musso in for Moscona. 1 hour down, 2 more to go, and we still have a ton to get to. NBA free agency officially kicks off in 1 hour, really, 58 minutes from right now. Jake Madison will be here in the next segment, give us a primer what we can expect for the New Orleans Pelicans as they enter Jamal Mosley's first offseason as the head coach, what rebuilding that might look like. MLB mock draft, 2 full round MLB mock draft. What are the LSU implications there? We'll touch on that. A potential Saints free agent target as well. Maybe some World Cup. Maybe World Cup. Maybe we'll dabble in that a little bit. The United States faces Bosnia and Herzegovina, obviously tomorrow in their first knockout round game. Already an upset yesterday with Germany falling, which our guy Freddie on Twitter was going through the motions. Man, the German fan who's just captured the hearts of America. So, I don't know. Maybe we might dabble in some World Cup a little bit later on the show. But for now, we'll continue to do what we've done really for the majority of the show so far. And that's talk some LSU football. I was perusing some CBSSports.com earlier today, just looking for some type of jumping off point to craft the segment around, and saw a piece from Brad Crawford that is titled 10 College Football Playoff Guarantees for 2026. All right, that has some potential. Got to figure LSU is going to be mentioned in that somewhere. Brad's been on this show talking about projecting LSU into the playoff and why he's so high on them this year. In all of his playoff projections, he's included LSU as one of the 12 teams that gets in, as many have. So I see a headline like that. So, well, let's see what he's got. You know they're going to be mentioned. And I did not intend for it to take me in the direction that it did. But his 5th guarantee is that LSU enjoys highest year-over-year increase in viewership. A brief thought on that, and I'll tell you where it led me. I think that's certainly possible. The Lane Kiffin angle, just can you imagine what the Clemson game is going to do? Lane Kiffin's first game as LSU's coach, 2 weeks later going to Ole Miss. Your month of November, when you look at this LSU schedule, you see Clemson, Ole Miss, A&M, Texas, Bama, all on it. Those are going to be some pretty highly viewed games. Just for a note here, Alabama was the nation's most watched team a year ago, according to Nielsen, 8.4 million per game, then Texas, then Georgia. You play 2 of those teams right there. LSU needs to nearly double its average to surpass Alabama's. Not saying they're going to do that, but when you talk about year-over-year increase, yes. Why? Because of the schedule. And that's where this took me. And included in this article is a quote, and forgive me, I should have pulled the audio from this. A quote from the Cover 3 podcast with Bud Elliott. Bud Elliott was on this podcast. And, of course, Bud Elliott, he of Blue Chip Ratio fame. And this is the quote that he gave. Quote, I don't think anyone has an easier SEC schedule than LSU this year. And I just could not disagree with that more. I don't understand where this got started, that LSU's schedule in 2026 is easy. And I'm not coming down on Bud Elliott. This is not the first time. I was filling in for Moscona earlier in the spring. And actually, it was CBS Sports. We went through a piece they had of which first-year SEC head coach had the toughest schedule. And LSU's was the easiest out of all of them. Now, granted, look, that includes Ryan Silverfield, and Arkansas' schedule is cruel and unusual punishment, as it is every year. So I'm not saying LSU should be considered the hardest, but that's just another instance of where people have looked at this and go, oh, LSU's schedule is easy. And look, I understand. No one is going to doubt the talent on LSU's team. I'm not doubting that. You signed a top 10 transfer class or a top 15 high school class and then the number 1 transfer class. And oh, by the way, you retained the most talented pieces of your team from a year ago. Harlan Berry, Trey Green, like DJ Pickett. We don't need to go through all of them. You know. So I'm not going to sit here and doubt the talent. I'm not going to tell you that LSU can't attack this schedule and go 10-2. I think they end up 9-3, but I'm not telling you they can't go 10-2 or put together great because they're talented. What I'm telling you, though, is to say easiest schedule in the SEC, that's, in my opinion, that's ridiculous. Because yes, while you have the talent, what is the thing everyone always talks about with the schedule? It also matters when and where you play teams. And LSU has brutal stretches on this schedule. And it's not just November. Your first 4 weeks. Clemson at Ole Miss, Texas A&M. Look, Clemson, they don't look like they're going to be exactly what they were projected to be a year ago, and they ended up not being very good. Good at LSU. Remember what we all thought about that LSU Clemson game a year ago? It doesn't have that same shine. LSU's a double-digit home favorite in that game. That is going to be a huge emotional spot for LSU and a really tough ask for Clemson. It makes sense for me to go, okay, yeah, Clemson's going to win that, and you'll beat Louisiana Tech. But then you go to Ole Miss. At Ole Miss, which is going to just be a hornet's nest, powder keg, emotional friggin' out-of-control train. And quite honestly, I think that game goes one of two ways. Either LSU gets swallowed up by all of that and they lose, or they weather the early storm and pull away in the second half. Like, I don't really think there's an in-between. I think those are the two ways that goes. But that is going to be a incredibly difficult ask and challenge for LSU. And then, oh, by the way, you come back home the next week and you play Texas A&M, who has beaten you the last 2 years, and Marcel Reed has torched you the last 2 years. And again, I go back to the talent. Yes. LSU is very talented. But, man, LSU has struggled against running quarterbacks, and that one in particular. He has gone over 100 yards rushing on you 2 years in a row. He didn't have another 100-yard rushing game last year except for the one against LSU. It's hard for me to just look at that and pencil a W in there and go, oh, yeah, especially coming off an emotional, physical football game the week prior at Ole Miss. You're going to have to come in and face a notoriously physical Texas A&M team who loves to run the ball. And you struggled against running quarterbacks in that one in particular. Like, what about that stretch screams easy? Then you go McNeese at Kentucky. We'll see what they are in Will Stein's first year, obviously. And look, I understand. But crazy things happen up at Commonwealth Stadium or Kroger Field, whatever it's called now. State at Auburn. If there's a stretch in LSU schedule that I go, okay, there's a breather, it's October. I think I share that opinion with a lot of people. But then you get to November and you go Bama, Texas, at Tennessee, at Arkansas. You end with back-to-back road conference games, which is one of the most difficult tasks to complete in the SEC. And you have it in the last week of the season after you play Alabama and Texas. What is Alabama going to be? I don't know. They haven't been as physical as they've been in the past. But also, you haven't been able to beat Kalen DeBoer yet. So forgive me for just looking at that and going, oh, that's a win for LSU. No, I'm not going to do that. Because quite honestly, you should have had a great chance to beat them the last 2 years, and you failed to do so, and you got blown out on your home field one of those years. Running quarterback, by the way. Texas, national championship contender, coming off the game against Alabama. And then, oh, by the way, after Bama, Texas, you go on the road to Tennessee. What are they going to be quarterback-wise? I don't know, but the spot is there. So I can look at some of the teams on this schedule and go, all right, yeah, what is Alabama really going to be? LSU should be a home favorite in that game. What are they really going to be? And say, yeah, they could win that one. Tennessee, no quarterback, but it's on the road. But, well, yeah, what are they going to be? But I know Ole Miss is going to be really tough, and you have A&M on the back of that. I know that stretch, given when and where you play teams in November, is brutal, and you could have a bunch on the line at that point too. Like, to me, this schedule is really difficult. Really difficult because of when and where you play teams and struggles you've had in the past that still need to be corrected. Tell me if you disagree. But I think to say LSU is the easiest schedule in the SEC, like Bud Elliott did, I think that's just flat out wrong. Like, I don't think I could disagree with that anymore. There are pitfalls and challenges to this everywhere for LSU in 2026, especially breaking in the amount of new players that you are, including your quarterback who missed the majority of spring. But we'll see. Easiest in the SEC. Man, that surprised me a little bit. All right, we're going to grab a break. We're going to come back on the other side. NBA free agency, 44, 45, somewhere in there, minutes away from starting. We'll get Jake Madison's take, a primer on what to expect for the New Orleans Pelicans and Joe Dumars and Jamal Mosley's first full offseason together as they try to rebuild the New Orleans Pelicans. That's next here on AFR.
AFR.
We're brought to you by Clegg's Nursery with 4 locations in the greater Baton Rouge area. Siegen near Airline, LA 16 in Denham. Mid-City on Don Moore, Garden Center on Greenwell Springs. You know those 4 locations, and what an awesome time to get by Clegg's Nursery because they still have every single day shipments of flowers coming in, plants, trees, shrubs. You want to beautify the exterior of your home. You want to add that pop of color to your flower bed, to your patio pots. Maybe you got unwanted pests like ants or snakes or mosquitoes, wasps. They can help you take care of all of them. Maybe you got weeds coming up in your lawn. You want to get rid of that. Maybe you got dead spots in your lawn. The horticulturists, the professionals at Clegg's Nursery have the knowledge, the know-how, the expertise, and all the products you need to win Yard of the Month every month for your whole life. Guaranteed. Actually, I can't back that up. You have to do some of the work, too. It's Clegg's Nursery. Proform Steel. I want you to remember the name. Why use Proform Steel? Well, I got tons of reasons. Here's a few. How about the lead times? 6 to 8 weeks from signed contract out the door. They'll get it to you quicker. Free delivery on every building. You buy it from them, they'll deliver it for free. It's Proform Steel. You can even order online. You can pick the style, size, color, doors, submit the form, get a call back the same day. And at Proform Steel, they use American-made materials on everything. No exceptions. It's Proform Steel. Maybe you need a shed in your backyard. Maybe we're talking about a big industrial facility. Need a steel building? You want Proform Steel. Make sure you call Brandon Golson, you know the name, at Proform Steel. Check him out, Proform Steel.
After further review, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana.
All right, NBA free agency officially gets underway at 5 p.m. Central Time. Should be another interesting off season for the New Orleans Pelicans. Jamal Mosley's first season as the head coach. Joe Dumars, their first season together. How do they rebuild this thing and get it close to being back into some type of postseason contention? Well, we'll get a free agency primer and we'll ask Jake Madison that very question. Locked on Pels on Twitter, X at NOLA Jake. Jake, we appreciate the time as always, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy to be on talking hoops with you.
Thankful for you to be here, man. I'm very much appreciative of your time as always. There's a lot of different angles we could attack this. Let's start with needs first, Jake, and then we'll get into what happens with some of the current guys on the team. Pelicans' biggest need this offseason is what?
I think you look at this as one thing, and it's a center. They need to upgrade the big man rotation. This is a team that struggled last year in terms of defensive rebounding. They were giving up about a third of opponents' misses to them. So when you think about that, for every 3 defensive possessions, if they're grabbing an offensive rebound in there, that's 4 defensive possessions. That's going to tire your guys out pretty significantly. This is a team that just needs more size. They need to be able to go and rebound the ball better and just terminate and end opposing possessions. That's really a center position. If you're still going to build around Zion Williamson, Derek Queen, they're not elite rebounders. Zion Williamson is undersized for the 4, but that's where you've got to play him. So it has to be done with your center position. That is an area they need to upgrade.
I know it's obviously early. It hasn't even officially opened, but we know how the NBA works. What options do they have there potentially in free agency to upgrade the center position?
Not a whole lot at this point in time. We're getting a lot of deals done kind of early, as it tends to go in the NBA, and you're just seeing a lot of players re-sign with their teams. And when you look at the Pelicans, they don't have much money to spend in free agency. They've got a number of big contracts, right? Zion Williamson is making over $40 million. Jordan Poole is $34 million. DeJounte Murray is almost $33. They don't have a ton of financial flexibility here. And frankly, the Pelicans, if we're counting the luxury tax line as like the number they will go to, they're essentially at about $12.2 million to spend in free agency with 1 or 2 roster spots open. And that's it. That's truthfully not going to get anyone who's a difference maker for you. So we could talk about names here in free agency, but honestly, there's no one out there that's going to boost this team pretty significantly. And anyone that was going to is essentially already re-signed at this point in time. So right now, things are kind of looking a little bit slim for New Orleans. You could be looking at someone like Zach Collins, who you might be able to get for cheap. You could get an older Andre Drummond, who's been in the league, though, 14 years at this point. But if you're looking at someone that's going to make a difference, no, they don't really exist out there in free agency right now.
So let's say they don't get they don't get a difference maker there. You mentioned Zach Collins. It sounds like they kind of have to go with what they have. How can they improve in I mean, none of these guys are getting bigger, right? So like, how can they improve with rebounds and things of that nature? Maybe not addressing that in free agency.
Yeah, I think when you look at this team, there was a lot of talk about what they might do on draft night. We heard a lot of smoke, right? A lot of rumors around Trey Murphy potentially getting moved. We heard a lot about Herb Jones as well. If they want to seriously change this roster and not essentially just run it back from last year, and look, the team won 26 games. They should not be simply running it back this year. It's going to have to be through a trade. And right now, their only strong trade assets are either future first-round picks. We saw what happened with that last year and that trade up for Derek Queen. So I don't know if I want them touching those, or it's going to be someone like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and trying to get a deal done that way. When you look at this roster, there's no one interested in Jordan Poole. There's no one interested in DeJounte Murray unless you're attaching 1 or 2 future first-round picks. And at that point, I don't know if that's what this team should do here. So they feel kind of stuck, to be truthful with you, and a little bit directionless because of that. But they're going to have to explore the trade market. And there are guys that are going to be available. You could get Miles Turner potentially from the Milwaukee Bucks as they're kind of going through a rebuild now with Giannis leaving and being traded to Miami. He's someone that defends the rim. He rebounds well enough and he can shoot the 3 a little bit. You could finally maybe put a court spacing center next to Zion Williamson, which would be interesting to see for, the first time in 8 years at this point. You could look at a team like the Memphis Grizzlies, who are kind of retooling and going in a different direction. Santi Aldama is more of a power forward than a center, but he's an interesting big man that I think you could put in the front court with the Zion Williamson, with the Derek Queen, and at least stabilize that position a little bit. Those are the type of moves that you're looking for here. But when you look at the rest of the roster, it still doesn't make it feel like this team's going to be a contender, even if they add that big man, that center that they really need.
You mentioned Herb Jones and Trey Murphy. Let's just go ahead and go there next. Will both Herb Jones and Trey Murphy be on the New Orleans Pelicans for 2026, 2027?
Man, I've gone back and forth on this so often at this point in time. And, on draft night, I was pretty certain that Trey was going to get moved. It really felt like that was going to happen. And then the Pelicans put a price on these guys that's pretty high. They want at least 3 first-round picks for Trey Murphy, 2 first-round picks for Herb Jones. And when you look around the NBA, there's been a bit of a market correction after the Desmond Bane trade from Memphis to Orlando a year ago, where those type of deals aren't materializing right now for the most part. Even Jaylen Brown isn't going to get 4 first-round picks like the Boston Celtics want. And so if the New Orleans Pelicans are going to stick to that very high evaluation of their players, no one's offering that. And I don't think any team's going to get desperate enough to offer that. So I see both those guys right now being back on the team next year as they try and run it back and hope that a new head coach in Jamal Mosley is going to be the difference maker for him.
A couple more guys. Obviously, we'll talk about Zion, and I want to circle back with you on DeJounte Murray as well. But of the 2026 free agents that are on this Pelicans team, like DeAndre Jordan, Looney, Hunter Dickinson, all that, do you see any of those guys signing back with New Orleans?
Looney, no, he's almost certainly gone. They declined the team option on him for this year, so he'll be a free agent, probably sign elsewhere, though I don't know if he's got much of a future in the league at this point. Age is just kind of caught up to him, and he did not make a real impact for New Orleans last season. I think the interesting name that you mentioned is DeAndre Jordan. They brought him in as just that kind of veteran when they had some injuries earlier on in the year, and he was just the veteran presence this team needed. You've heard Derek Queen rave about him. He's working with him this offseason. He was really a mentor to a lot of these young guys, but even the established veterans too. You saw him working with Zion Williamson. You saw him working with Herb Jones. They could sign him. You'd sign him for a veteran minimum deal. It wouldn't add too much to the Pelicans salary cap. I don't think he offers much in terms of on-court production, but if you just want to have him around in the locker room, absolutely bring him back. I think that's a signing that actually paid some dividends for the team last offseason. I also wonder if you could bring him back in some capacity as a coach, and I think that would also be kind of interesting to see as well. But I don't, I don't see someone like Hunter Dickinson. He might come back on a 2-way deal. That's what he was on. Big guy, but I don't think any of those guys are going to really massively crack the rotation of the team.
Jake Madison is our guest, Locked On Pels podcast. If you don't already listen, you should get subscribed as well. He's on Twitter at NolaJake. Jake, let's talk about Zion Williamson. I mean, he's eligible for another extension here shortly. How does he fit with this team long term? You got a good sample size of games out of him a year ago, and he was really good. But the long term fit is something that really comes up with him right now.
I do think this team will explore extension possibilities with him. He's making $42 million this year. He's got, I think, 1 or 2 more years on his deal. I'll look it up in a second here. And, he making $46 million. He played last year. That's great. And you've heard no trade buzz around him because it takes more than 1 year to really change people's opinions around Zion Williamson in the league and just the lack of availability that he's had despite being healthy last year and coming back from injury early last year. So I think this is someone they want to just try and see if you can make it work. And the reason for that is his ceiling is higher than anybody else on the team. When he's healthy and playing his best, he's the best player on the team and he's a generational talent. And I think front offices are straight up scared to let that guy go because it didn't work here in New Orleans and he goes to another team and all of a sudden he's thriving and then you're the guy that traded away Zion Williamson and that's a good way to lose your job. And so that's why I think the team's just still building around him. They've given no indications that they want to trade him whatsoever. I also don't think he has much value around the league either. But you mentioned the fit, right? And that's the problem for New Orleans here. They're stuck between 2 timelines, and they have been for this past year. You traded up to draft Derek Queen, gave up essentially 2 first-round picks to get him. You also have Jeremiah Fears. Both those guys made the all-rookie second team. They look like the future of this franchise. They look both like guys that you could build around. Jeremiah Fears had a 40-point game. Derek Queen had multiple triple doubles last year. That's a really impressive thing for 2 rookies who are super young, and it feels like you should be focusing on them and building around them. But Derek Queen and Zion Williamson don't fit. The team was significantly worse when both of them were on the court together because the fit isn't there. Neither of them are good defenders. Neither of them protect the rim. Neither of them space the court. Their weaknesses are just compounded because it's similar weaknesses here. So if you truthfully want to build around Derek Queen, you need to find a better big man for him. And that's why I think center is the most important thing for New Orleans. But also, if you want to be competitive and win now, you need to put Derek Queen on the bench and find another big man for Zion Williamson. And these are competing things. And I think this team is going to try and force Zion Williamson and Derek Queen to work together this year, only to quickly realize, no, this isn't the right type of fit. And at that point, they're going to kind of be behind the 8 ball on what they need to do to figure out a plan going forward. As you mentioned, what's Zion, what's the future with Zion Williamson? I'm not really sure. They seem committed to him and building around him right now. But if you're also committed to Derek Queen, I don't think these two things work together. And that's going to be the big challenge for the Pelicans, is simply figuring out a direction and trying to prioritize either Zion's timeline or the young guy's timeline.
Oh, man. I mean, that's that's the whole thing, right? I mean, you just said it, and they've said it, and Zion said it. He's committed to being here. He wants to be here. He lives in New Orleans. They want to build around him. They've always been committed to building around him. But, man, it feels like they've just sit there and spun their wheels, and they seem to content to do that again. That's just, man, it's hard because it's like, all right, you want to build around both, like you just said. It's just like, can it work the way it's currently constructed? And they're going to try it again. I mean, that's just, man, that's hard to sit back and watch.
I think it's particularly frustrating for the fans. And one of the things that I feel this, and I've gotten this sense from a lot of the fan base, is just that this team feels stuck.
Yeah.
And part of that comes from they just don't want to take a step back and try and build something from the ground up. That dreaded idea of a rebuild, tearing it all down, even though you have two pieces that you should be building around in Fears and Queen. And this is going to be year 8 of Zion Williamson. He has not played in a single playoff game, partially, due to the inability to build around him and, not great front office work at times, but also his lack of availability and his own fault in this sort of side with everything. I think it hurts even more when you look at teams in the Western Conference and around the NBA. The Clippers were a little bit directionless, but earlier today, they just traded away Kawhi Leonard, got a bunch of first-round picks, drafted someone at 5th overall, and seem to be prioritizing building around their youth and not giving someone who's aging in Kawhi Leonard an extension. You had the Memphis Grizzlies yesterday finally trade away John Morant after trading away Desmond Bane last offseason and Jaren Jackson Jr. during the season. They pivoted from where they were because they realized that wasn't good enough, and we have a chance to build around some of the young guys that we've drafted and add another one. So they have a direction. Look at Charlotte. They were almost in the playoffs last year. They won 44 games. They were the surprise of the NBA in the second half of the season. They traded away LaMelo Ball. They traded away Miles Bridges, got picks, and decided to prioritize Brandon Miller, who's going to be in his 4th year next year, Con Knippel, who's a great rookie, and then add the right type of pieces around those guys. You see multiple teams that did not have a direction find that direction this offseason. And then here's the Pelicans still trying to choose a direction, but not really, because they're just trying to do two things at once. And that just never works at the NBA level.
Yeah, I can certainly understand the frustration. You said it earlier, it's a 26-win team. You can't just run it back, and kind of looks like they're trying to run it back a little bit. Jake Madison, our guest. One more for you, Jake. All right, what's going to happen with DeJounte Murray here with his future in New Orleans?
Probably stays on the team unless they kind of go big with some sort of, very aggressive trade, which I still think they're trying to do. We've heard Joe Dumars say, we can't just run it back. We won 26 games. They're hyper aware of that, I think. But unless they're willing to include picks with someone like DeJounte Murray or even Jordan Poole, those guys are going to be on the team next year. No, they don't have value around the league. I think when you looked at that DeJounte Murray trade under David Griffin, that was an overpay at the time. And then the injuries immediately hit him. And that first year in New Orleans was a disaster. He came back last year and showed some flashes or two, but this is someone who has kind of been declining a little bit. I don't want to say significantly in the NBA. He hasn't made an all-star team in a number of years. He hasn't made the all-defensive team again. This is someone that just doesn't have a ton of value around the league. And when you look at his contract running for multiple years, that's going to scare off teams. He makes $32.8 million next year. He's got a player option after that for $31 million. Teams don't want to pay that if guys aren't producing. And that's why he's probably going to be maybe starting for your Pelicans on opening night over someone like Jeremiah Fears.
Jake, I was half hoping you were going to come in here and hype me up a little bit, man, and get me a little bit excited. But
I wish I could have come in, but I think that, as we've talked about, this team just really does feel stuck here.
They're stuck. Well, hopefully Jamal Mosley can be enough of a difference to up the win total a little bit more, and maybe some of these guys, kind of find the fountain of youth a little bit. Jake Madison, Locked on Pels. Y'all get subscribed, listen daily. It's fantastic on Twitter, X, @NolaJake. Jake, we appreciate it as always, man. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely. That is Jake Madison. This is After Further Review, presented by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana. Due for a break here, but first, Matt on Rouse's.
AFR.
Rouse's.com, Rouse's.com. 4th of July, right around the bend, y'all. Saturday, we celebrate 250 years of America. Red-blooded American fury. You want to go get burgers and dogs and beers and Cokes and everything you get, apple pie, America. You go to Rouse's. What are Rouse's colors? Red and white. I know we need some blue in there, but the point is, it's Rouse's because it's America. Great local retailer. You're getting ready for the 4th of July. Everything you need. Chips and dips and dogs and burgers and buns and drinks and everything. Get on by Rouse's, the official supermarket of America. They're the official supermarket of the Saints. It's Rouse's.com. Rouse's, this feels like home.
After Further Review, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana.
Love telling you about Arco Power Systems, ARCCO, arco.com, arco.com. That's Arco Power Systems. We talk about generators a lot in Louisiana, especially all along the Gulf Coast, where we're sort of in this storm belt right here in the Gulf Coast. Well, of course, a lot of people have home standby generators. When we talk about Arco Power Systems, these are not home standby generators. This is industrial generator power. This is for your business. I mean, just think about it. When the power goes out, be it a hurricane, an ice storm, snow like we had last year, power goes out. What do you do with your business? Well, being offline is not an option. That's why you need Arco Power Systems. ARCCO, arco.com, arco.com, arco.com. Just look at all the locations. Baton Rouge, Bossier, Harvey, Lake Charles, Mandeville, Mobile, LaPorte, Texas, San Antonio, Little Rock, Houston, Dallas. They're everywhere. So if you're a business and you need standby power for your business, you need Arco Power Systems. ARCCO, arco.com, arco.com, arco.com.
All right, the MLB draft. The MLB draft is 11 days away. Prep Baseball Report released a very comprehensive 2-round mock, including the competitive balance rounds and everything, 75 picks that I want to dive into right here. MLB draft, it's always an interesting deal, just with the slot values and the money, and teams are able to really manipulate that and under slot value sign guys for over slot. It's just, I think we've all become accustomed to it enough around here dealing with LSU that we all have a pretty good handle on how it works. LSU a year ago got destroyed in the MLB draft. They lost 8 players in their signing class, their high school signing class, to Major League Baseball. That's just that's not counting the players you lost off your team, off your national championship team. It hurts so bad because you didn't have a big class. LSU's a big signing class. 23 guys, I think, is where they stand now, high school-wise. They're probably going to lose probably 6 to 8 again. Now, you've already got some really good news with Braxton Beatty. And then, obviously, on Monday, Nate Davis, coming to school. That is huge. Perfect game. That's like a top 150 draft prospect, regardless of where you look. Somebody who's probably going to command second-round money, regardless of where he was taken. And Perfect Game ranked him as the 4th highest-ranked signee in LSU's class. You're getting him to campus. That's huge. It's a great left-handed bat. Awesome speed defender, really athletic guy, going to compete for a starting role in the outfield as a freshman. You have that one spot open after you added Jason Wax and Bino Waters. So Nathaniel Davis most likely going to compete there with William Patrick. That is a huge get, and he joins a long line, what is becoming a really long line of highly ranked guys spurning the draft and coming to play for Jay Johnson at LSU. So those are good things. When you look at this mock from Prep Baseball Report, like I said, it's comprehensive. You start with the current LSU players, and it's the two that you're seeing in all of these. It's Derek Couriel and Jake Brown. So Pro Baseball Report has Couriel, 14th overall to the Miami Marlins. You would obviously expect Derek Couriel to sign that deal, as I think many of us are expecting. You find Jake Brown in the second round, 53rd overall to the Diamondbacks. Again, you'd expect Jake Brown to sign that deal and move forward. Where the real intrigue comes in is your high school class. Because look, LSU, they didn't go crazy in the transfer portal, right? Signed 6 guys, 2 pitchers, 4 position players. And it's a really good crop. Like the top of the line guys. Allocated their resources, did that. Now the focus really turns to your high school class. In this mock, there are 5 LSU signees. That's in the first 2 rounds, 75 picks. 5 LSU signees mocked. So when we're talking 6 to 8 potentially losses, maybe you get some surprises in there. We'll see. It can paint a pretty grim picture. But does LSU have a shot at any of these guys? So the first one you find is Logan Schmidt, the lefty, like top left-handed pitcher in the class, to the Angels. We'll see what becomes of that. I know Baseball America had a report earlier today that there's a chance now that his, it's just a wide range of options for him, and it's kind of becoming, I think the word they used was volatile. We'll see. Guys like that tend to work those things out. If it's becoming volatile, that tells you he is deep in negotiations most likely, and that's why it's becoming volatile. Those things tend to work themselves out, and those guys tend to sign. Could there be a chance? Sure. There's always a chance. That's why, except for a guy like Connor Griffin, there wasn't a chance. But that's why you recruit the highest of high. Look, as we sit here 11 days out, I still expect Logan Schmidt to sign a professional contract and not play baseball at LSU. You go further down the list, and that's where you find Dominic Santorelli, a first baseman, 58 overall to the Reds. I think it is pretty much understood that he's going to start his professional career. Young man had a tremendous showing at the MLB Combine, and it was one of those showings that it's just like, man, that's going to be one that would be fun to think about at playing at LSU, which is I don't want to call it a disappointment because, young man needs to go do what's best for his family. He would have just been awesome to see potentially play. And who knows, maybe a surprise happens, but I think we kind of all understand where that happens, or where that tends to go. You get into the competitive balance round B, and you find Lucas Naraki at 71 overall, and I want to come back to him. The very next pick is Malachi Washington. He's kind of been one of those guys where it seems like it's just understood that he's going to move on. Outfielder Jensen Hirschhorn, LSU's top-ranked right-handed pitcher signee, is 74th to the Twins. Kind of seems like he would move on as well. Those are your 5. Naraki, man, this one will be tough to swallow if he ends up signing the professional contract. And by the way, if Lucas Naraki gets drafted 71st overall, he should absolutely sign the contract, and he will. But that's a guy who at the MLB Combine put on an absolute show with the bat. So he's a two-way guy. And I'm sure it'd be disappointing because Naraki is a guy, and he I should say after the Combine, he's really become a fast riser. And there was a time where you look at that and you go, okay, you got a shot with him. And the reason why is his stature. He's 5'11", 170 pounds. He's just not big. And the MLB drafts in general, sports tend to ding you for that. The stuff on the mound is electric. It's a mid-90s fastball from that frame, from the left side. Obviously, we talked about the two-way ability. At the MLB Combine, he hit 3 of the longest home runs in the batting practice portion of that Combine. All of them went over 420 feet. He is a very powerful, compact player. But again, projectability just might not still be there from a size standpoint. It was long thought that could ding him. Kylie McDaniel, ESPN.com's draft expert, was on this show about a month ago talking about Rocky and said the same thing, that they like the metrics, they like, the stuff, his ability, but the stature might ding him to where it's, okay, well, we like you, but why don't you go ahead and prove this for a couple years in the SEC, 3 seasons in the SEC, and we can revisit it. But after the MLB Combine, he has really risen, and that's a guy, because of the opportunity to potentially get him, that LSU has spent a lot of resources on and really talking with him throughout the regular season about his options and the offseason. So if you lose him, that's a bummer. And with the way he's rising, it certainly seems like losing him now is more of the possibility than getting him to campus. Again, you got 11 days. Things can change. He's not going to grow. He's not going to shoot up to 6'3" in 11 days. But that showing at the Combine might be enough for the MLB to look at the two-way and go, all right, hold on, we can work with this. Because if it doesn't work out at this level on the mound, he's shown the chops at the plate potentially as well. That is going to be one to continue to watch. And I'm going to tell you, if you do get him, that's an immediate impact player for you in 2027, one way or the other. You need left-handed pitching, and he could absolutely be that for you. And if the bat's going to translate and have that type of power, Jay Johnson has talked about building power through this program. He's certainly a guy for that. Out of everyone that we just went through of your signees, that's the one to keep the closest eye on, because they have invested in educating him and things of that nature, because there was one point a very real chance that they would get him, just given maybe his stature. But after that showing in the Combine, he is consistently listed as biggest draft risers. They're going to have to really hold their breath on that one. Now it feels like, and hopefully for their sake, they get him, because that seems like a real impact guy from day one. But obviously we'll track it as it continues to go. But found that mock draft interesting. And the other notable thing is, of the LSU signings, there's 5 of them in there. They all appeared after round 1. Now, granted, teams move money and all that, but they all appeared after round 1. So just keep an eye on that. 11 days out, the MLB draft. Then we will have a really good picture of what LSU's 2027 Tiger baseball roster will look like. And that'll be fun conversations to have as well throughout the rest of the offseason. We're going to grab a break, come back on the other side, close out hour number 2 of AFR with Tigers and the Pros.
AFR.
AFR is brought to you by the Watermark Hotel and the Renaissance Hotel, 2 beautiful hotel properties in Baton Rouge, the Watermark downtown, the Renaissance Southtown right there on Bluebonnet. And when it comes to hosting your event, both the Watermark and the Renaissance are perfect. The Watermark is a gorgeous, elegant spot in downtown Baton Rouge. That wedding reception, that smaller gathering, that meeting space, they can do it. They've kept so much of the history and tradition of that iconic building while modernizing it. The Gregory is a great restaurant inside of the Watermark as well. And then, of course, the Renaissance Hotel, Southtown, right there on Bluebonnet in Baton Rouge. It's more modern. It's a gorgeous hotel property at the Renaissance Hotel, where they have meeting space that can accommodate up to 500 people, 7,000 square foot of meeting space, perfectly located right off of Bluebonnet and I-10. It's the Watermark and the Renaissance Hotels in Baton Rouge.
After further review, powered by Sunshine, your hometown John Deere dealer in Louisiana.
Always a pleasure to tell you about our friends at the Williamson Eye Center. Check them out online at williamsoneye.com. They've got locations all over the greater Baton Rouge area. On the Baton Rouge General Campus, you turn off a Bluebonnet onto Picardy, you make that right. And then right there at the stop sign, the building on the right, the first 2 floors, that's the Williamson Eye Center. State-of-the-art dry eye center, and it's full service. Of course, they have their state-of-the-art surgery center there where you can have your LASIK or whatever surgical procedure you're having. But they have your standard annual eye exam as well at the Williamson Eye Center. Learn more at williamsoneye.com. The thing I tell you every day is take the advice that I was given and change your life. To give yourself the gift of sight is absolutely incredible. If you're someone like me who spent your life with contacts or glasses, there is a way to be done with it forever. williamsoneye.com. Go see Dr. Blake Williamson for that free consultation. 924-2020. 924-2020 or WilliamsonEYE.com for the Williamson Eye Center.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here of AFR. We'll do so with Tigers in the Pros. Take it away, Braxton.
Tigers in the Pros. They still bleed purple and gold. They're just really rich now.
All right, so Aaron Nola for the Philadelphia Phillies last night versus the Pittsburgh Pirates went 4 innings, gave up 8 hits, had 7 earned runs, 2 home runs, and 5 strikeouts. That is a 6.04 ERA and a loss, 11-7. Nola is now 3-5 on the season. Alex Bregman for the Chicago Cubs last night went 2 of 4 from the plate. Cubs get the win over the Padres 3-2. Toronto Blue Jays host the New York Mets tonight. First pitch at 6:07 p.m. with Kevin Gausman on the bump for the Blue Jays. Last but not least, Ben Simmons is prepping for an NBA return after taking a year off to, quote-unquote, find himself again. He was last in the Los Angeles Clippers 2024-2025 roster, is looking to get stronger than ever and get back onto the court and hopes to show potential teams that he can still play. That is your latest on Tigers in the Pros.
There you go, Ben. Come on back, man. NBA misses you, Ben Simmons. Wasn't he doing he owned a professional fishing team?
Yeah,
I think I remember doing that.
That's
in
the last thing I saw.
Yeah,
but
I think I remember doing that in Tigers in the Pros. Well, I guess you can only do that for so much. Maybe he still owns the team. They always get that itch to play, man. Well, come on back, Ben Simmons. Maybe the Pelicans will sign you. All right, hour number 3 is next.
AFR.
And get it done. Gordon McKernan Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured and it's not your fault, do what injured people in Louisiana have done for more than 30 years. Call Gordon McKernan Injury Attorneys. 888-8888. It's all 8s. 888-8888. I don't even need to give you the area code because no matter where you are in the state, it doesn't matter. Just dial 888-8888 for Gordon McKernan Injury Attorneys. Gordon does an awesome job, man. He's a great person. They've been so invested in our communities with all the charitable and service work that they do. They give back into the communities that they represent, no matter what time of year. If it's the bike giveaway for kids around Christmas time, if it's the laptop giveaway around back to school time, if it's the charitable work they do during October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, they're always involved in the community. We tell you all the time, of course, about the G Team and what Gordon's done with NIL and the opportunities that he's afforded student athletes. Just a great, great community partner. If you've been injured, you need representation, go to getgordon.com. That's getgordon.com. Get Gordon and get it done.